All right, welcome to this explainer. Today we're diving into a corporate hero's journey that is literally one for the history books. Chanel's miraculous turnaround right in the teeth of a brutal industry downturn. If you follow the business of fashion, you already know the last couple of years have been incredibly unforgiving. But one legendary brand managed to flip the script entirely.
Now, I want you to think about this number for a second. 130%. That right there is the massive surge in Chanel's foot traffic in China during the 2026 Lunar New Year. I mean, in an era where most retail stores were practically begging people to walk through their doors, Chanel was dealing with tidal waves of shoppers. So the big question is, how on earth did one brand completely defy the great luxury crash?
Well, to figure that out, we first need to talk about the luxury winter, an absolute dark age for the industry.
You really have to understand just how incredibly bleak 2025 actually was. Consumer confidence was just battered by global tensions, and the appetite for high-end luxury had basically frozen solid. I mean, undisputed heavyweights like Kering took a devastating 10% hit. Even the mighty LVMH dipped by 1%. Sure, you had resilient performers like Hermès up almost 9% and Prada up over 9%, holding the line. But then, right in the mix, there's Chanel, managing to pull off a positive 2% growth. Honestly, given where they were just a year prior, surviving this freeze was nothing short of a miracle.
But they were actually incredibly vulnerable before this. We have to look at the shadow of the mentor and a period of fading relevance.
So the root of Chanel's vulnerability really came down to a massive shift in power dynamics within the house. For 36 years, Karl Lagerfeld essentially built and sustained this modern fashion empire. He was the gravity holding it all together. But when he passed in 2019, his longtime deputy, Virginie Viard, took the reins. And her era, running from 2019 up to 2024, well, it really became a period where the brand was kind of just coasting on past momentum instead of innovating for the future.
Under Viard, the top-line sales numbers looked like they were growing, but it was basically a mirage. It was driven primarily by aggressive post-pandemic price hikes, rather than actual demand or creative excitement. The critical reception was definitely cooling off, and the magic was fading. Now contrast that with what Matthieu Blazy brought to the table later, genuine creative deconstruction that sparked massive organic social buzz.
Because by 2024, that old strategy of simply endlessly jacking up prices, it completely backfired. Consumers aren't naive, they pushed back, and the fallout was brutal. A 4% drop in overall sales, and operating profits literally plunged by 30%. Minus 30%. The brand was bleeding relevance, bleeding cash, and heading straight into that luxury winter.
Right when things were looking their absolute darkest, enter the catalyst, Matthieu Blazy.
In April 2025, Chanel found exactly the total reset they desperately needed in Matthieu Blazy, a 41-year-old Belgian-French visionary who you probably know from his incredible run as creative director at Bottega Veneta. He brought this bold, deeply modern energy to the storied French house. He wasn't just a great designer, he was exactly the master architect of brand momentum that Chanel was begging for.
So, how exactly did the Double C return to dominance? Let's break down the strategy.
He kicked off what the industry literally calls blazomania through a total synchronization of product and marketing. On the product side, he completely nailed the balance of heritage and modernity. He took Chanel's most untouchable classics, like the tweed and the famous Double C logo, and totally deconstructed them for a new generation. We're talking lightweight fringe skirts, semi-sheer suits. He made the clothes feel fresh, breathable, and culturally relevant again, without losing an ounce of that core Chanel identity.
But, even the best product needs a killer launch strategy, and Blazy ran this brilliant two-pronged marketing playbook. Step 1, completely pamper your top-tier VIPs. Treat them to grand, highly exclusive, and secretive private viewings and pre-orders to keep that ultimate luxury dream alive for the big spenders. But then, step 2, simultaneously execute a rapid rollout of entry-level products to capture the aspirational social media crowd. He was brilliantly feeding the ultra-rich and the mainstream hype machine at the exact same time.
And this birthed massive, tangible hits. You had the Preppy Coco flat bag, the suede bowling bag, the vintage messenger, but the absolute showstopper was the Urban Essentials small shopping bag. That piece went completely viral online. The social buzz was just deafening, especially after massive Korean star Go Yoon-jung was spotted carrying it at Paris Fashion Week.
So, what did this all amount to? Let's talk about the turnaround miracle and Chanel's triumphant return.
Because at the end of the day, hype only matters if it moves the needle, right?
And the numbers here were nothing short of miraculous. Within just 1 week, literally 7 days of Blazy's very first show, consumer desire absolutely exploded. Searches for Chanel's classic flat bags skyrocketed by 132% on Vestiaire Collective. When people couldn't get their hands on the brand new drops, they were frantically hunting for the classics. That is the definition of serious brand heat.
And all of that heat translated directly to the bottom line. The recovery from 2024 to 2025 was monumental. Blazy managed to take that terrifying 4% sales deficit and 30% profit plunge and totally reverse them into solid positive growth, up 2% in sales and 5% in profits by the end of 2025. He literally stopped the bleeding and got the heart of the company beating again. And the craziest part? The momentum didn't just stop there. It accelerated into pure dominance in early 2026. Chanel dethroned all of its rivals to snatch the #1 spot on the list index of the hottest brands. Remember that 130% surge in Chinese foot traffic we talked about at the beginning? Well, it was mirrored globally, with massive physical crowds completely overwhelming flagship stores from New York to London.
Wall Street absolutely took notice of this masterclass. Lucas Solka, a highly respected luxury analyst at Bernstein, hit the nail on the head. He pointed out that Chanel attracted the vast majority of consumer attention. Think about how wild that is. In a freezing market where every single brand was fighting tooth and nail just to get consumers to look their way, Chanel successfully monopolized the conversation.
So as the iconic Double C reclaims its throne at the very pinnacle of fashion, it really leaves us with one massive, provocative question. We saw what Karl Lagerfeld accomplished over his 36-year reign. Looking at the sheer explosive scale of this turnaround, will Matthieu Blazy become this generation's Lagerfeld? Has Chanel finally found the true successor to guide them through the next era? Keep your eyes on the data, folks, because this story is far from over. Thanks for joining me for this explainer, and I'll catch you on the next one.